We're told constantly not to chase things, and on some level, I think most of us agree with this. However, I'm going to show you why it's actually important to chase things, especially if you have the urge to do so. Make sure you stay till the end because there's a very valuable message in what I'm about to say. In 2018, I was 25, and I got my very first full-time job. Up until then, I was working different part-time jobs until finishing college. For about 3 years, I couldn't stop thinking about buying my dream car, which at that time was a Dodge Challenger. Every time I saw that car drive by on the road, I would tell myself that I absolutely needed it. I would picture myself driving it and think about how awesome it would be just to drive that thing around town. At the time, I was driving a 2007 Toyota Corolla, and it ran perfectly, and it had only about 50,000 miles on it. The only thing that sucked about that Toyota Corolla is that I'm 6 feet tall and I was crammed in that thing. It was a great car, but it was no Dodge Challenger. So after working my big boy job for a year, I decided that I was finally going to buy a Dodge Challenger. I spent weeks looking on used car websites because I knew I wanted that car, but I didn't want it to eat my entire paycheck like something new would. I also didn't really care about horsepower, so pretty much any model would do. After weeks of searching on my lunch break, when I was home from work, when I woke up in the morning, even when I went out to do things, I found the car that I wanted, which was a used 2010 Dodge Challenger SE, and the SE was the base model. Now, this car was in great condition, had no accidents. It also only had about 50,000 miles on it, and it was $13,000. So I drove over to the next state where the car was located, traded in the Toyota, financed what was left over, and drove out in a Dodge Challenger. I drove that car home with a huge grin on my face. I'd finally done it. I bought myself a Dodge Challenger. For the next year and a half, I drove that car everywhere while making my $300 car payment and also the extra $150 that it cost my car insurance. Sure, after that, my life didn't fundamentally change, but it did feel really good to be driving that Dodge Challenger. I was finally able to drive something with legroom. My friends thought it was cool, and it was faster than my Toyota. So after that year and a half, I was 27 years old and finally wanted to start the rest of my adult life. At that time, I was living in an apartment with a girlfriend, and we wanted to take the next steps in our relationship. So I looked at our financial situation and realized that we weren't going to be able to afford having children with the jobs that we currently had. So we had to make a big change quickly. I was stressed. How are we going to afford having a baby and paying for childcare, or being able to afford one of us staying home and continue to live on our own? I didn't have the answer, but I knew I would have to figure something out relatively quickly. By the way, the city that we were living in was New York City, and you could imagine the cost of living there. We made the decision that living in New York City would be way too expensive and we wouldn't be able to afford the type of life we wanted to live there. So I started to look for jobs around the country. I applied to a bunch that were in the same career field that I was currently in, and waited patiently. Finally, one got back to me, but the caveats were that it was 500 miles away, the pay wasn't that great, and it wasn't exactly ideal. But the cost of living in that area was a lot lower, and we would be so much closer to living our ideal lives. So I accepted the job, with my start date being about a month and a half away. My girlfriend and I were very excited about the future, but there was only one problem. There was no way we would be able to afford this move with the added car payment and the additional monthly insurance costs. We were trying to come up with ideas about what to do to have a little bit of extra money every month, but ultimately we arrived at the same conclusion. I had to get rid of my car. The thing that I had fantasized about for years, my Dodge Challenger. It was a tough decision and I felt pretty sad about it. But with the little bit of time that we had left, it was the most practical decision we could have made. I sold my Dodge Challenger and I immediately bought a 2000 Dodge Grand Caravan with 90,000 miles for about $2,500. The AC and heat didn't work in that thing, but it did run fairly well. Immediately, I hated that thing, but it did allow us to move, and we had that extra $450 every month. It allowed me to get to and from work, and at that time, that's what I cared about the most. After about a year, I realized I felt no difference in my quality of life driving the Dodge Grand Caravan versus driving the Dodge Challenger. Sure, the Challenger drove a lot better, it looked a lot cooler, and everything in the Challenger worked, but my life, happiness, and overall sense of well-being had not changed at all since selling the Dodge Challenger. I realized that Challenger was just a thing, and that $450 extra per month allowed us to live the life that we wanted to live. Now it's almost 5 years later, We've been able to achieve our goals, and I'm the happiest I've ever been. I realized that things had no bearing on my overall feeling of satisfaction in life. Experiences, memories, loved ones, those are the things that made me feel whole. So my message to you is go ahead, chase things. See how it makes you feel. I'm sure you already know the answer, and that's that things will not make you feel any better in life. However, I knew this too, even before buying my Dodge Challenger. But this was a lesson that I wasn't going to learn from anyone else. I needed to learn this lesson on my own. A lesson that was going to change my life would only cost me $13,000. Sure, that was a lot of money at that time, but it's better than $30,000 or $300,000. And at that time, it was only about 26% of my yearly salary. So if you're going to chase things, here's a few tips. Tip number one is think about the potential downside. Do you need the absolute highest priced thing you can afford? Don't spend extra money just to spend it. Think about me and my Challenger. I bought a used based model that was 8 years old. Tip number two is pay attention to how you feel once you get that thing. Let's say you eventually learn the lesson that I believe most of us learn, and that is that things won't buy you fulfillment. This is a lesson that you really only want to learn once. Once the great feeling of owning that thing eventually wears off after weeks, months, or even years, this doesn't mean that now you need to buy the next big thing. You'll get the same result. Tip number three is think about the costs that are other than financial that come with owning that thing. For me, it was the time cost of having to trade hours of my life to my job so that I could afford the Dodge Challenger. It would have also been the opportunity cost of not being able to move to a new state and begin my new life. Ask yourself how important those costs might be to you. And that's it. Go ahead and chase things. Let me know your result. What's been your experience with chasing things? Let me know in the comments.